Welcome everyone. Welcome to the guest speaker series. Today we are at our 50th session. Today we have Freedom Cheteni with us, who would be speaking on Exponential Technologies. Freedom is the editor-in-chief of School Superintendent Journal. He is also the CEO of Invent XR Educational Foundation, and he designs and builds educational infrastructure for the digital age. So before we head on to the session, let's just go through a couple of housekeeping rules and also through our product features and introduction. So at Moonshot Jr, we integrate STEAM skills, the learning of STEAM skills in children with the help of our innovation-centric, entrepreneurship-focused, model-based program. So we focus on science, technology, engineering, art, and math while we teach you throughout the journey. It's a product-focused approach, so anything starting with why you're building a product. So you start with what kind of problem that you're solving, and then you brainstorm ideas and eventually get to launching your product on an e-commerce platform such as Amazon and eBay. So it's a whole journey which you go through. Right now, our students are spread across 14 countries, and we are expanding to more. So Freedom, over to you.
All right. So while we begin this whole process, I'd like you guys to use the chat and write down what you think an exponential technology is. Like, what do you think an exponential technology is? Just and remember, I'm just asking you to write what you think. So it doesn't have to be correct. It doesn't have to be anything special, but it's essentially what you think. So let's just do that, for a couple seconds. So let's see, what you think, in your mind, exponential technology is.
Okay, so we have one response from Mali, and according to them, it's AI robots. What about others? What do you guys feel?
I like that. AI robots, so AI, so we're looking at artificial intelligence there and robotics. Very good. Very good. Okay. So continue to write your thoughts, and as they come in, we can refer to them. But essentially, what we just did was to unlock the mysteries of the brain, to get you all thinking about moonshot thinking. So, are we all seeing the slides? Did I share?
Yes, Freedom. We can see this.
Right. So, if you all remember, in the 60s, I wasn't, most of all of us were not born yet. President Kennedy made a daring declaration that in the next 10 years, we are going to the moon. We are going to put a man on the lunar surface, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And everyone all over the world was like, oh my gosh, this president is crazy. How could you put a human being on the moon? It wasn't until 10 years later, on July 20th, 1969, that Neil Armstrong landed on the lunar surface. And his first words when he made his first step was, one small step for man, one small step for man, one giant leap for humankind. Because the moment he set his foot on the surface of the moon, something extraordinary happened. The entire world was never going to be the same again. And that is the birth of moonshot thinking. There was one moonshot. And it took exactly one human being to successfully land on the moon. In those times, we were indeed living in extraordinary times in our history. And today, 50 years later, we still talk about that event. You guys are living in an extraordinary time today, especially with this COVID-19 pandemic. If you were not sleeping, you were probably speeding. And when we go past this pandemic, all those who slept will realize that they slept for a whole entire year. And all of those who were speeding are going to have extraordinarily amazing results. And that is what is going to separate a regular thinker from a moonshot thinker. And you will see by the results that they create. So people really have no idea how things are changing. 150,000 years ago, we had reached this agrarian era, meaning that we were growing wheat and vegetables and cotton and beans and all of that. And that was a local economy. And that is how our species survived. And the kind of thinking there was provide resources for local needs using whatever is available to you. Remember, there were no robots. Remember, there was no AI. One of you said exponential technology is really about robotics and AI, and that is correct. And we will go over why that is correct. But it's not the entire answer. But that is part of it. People thought locally and linearly. It's like when you guys were at school, before the global shutdown, you had your local class. You never thought of anything outside your class. But now you are seeing that everything is connected. We are having like this expert session, with Moonshot Jr., and we are all over the world. Some of us are in North America, some of us are in Asia, some of us are in Europe and Africa, you name it. You guys are from everywhere. Why? Because we have reached this exponential age, which is not local. It is not localized, but it is globalized. And what has really changed was something that happened in 1989. What happened in 1989? Someone can just say if you remember what happened. You were not born.
Yeah, a lot of our students, they are born in, I think, late 2000s. But just a wild guess, if any one of you could think.
What do you think? It's like one of the first bullets. Something was invented. Something of everything.
Yeah, difficult for students to relate to an era. Like they're like, oh, we weren't there. We don't know.
Okay, good. That's why I'm there. Yeah. So what happened in 1989 is that the internet, the World Wide Web, was invented by Sir Ken. Oh. Yeah. So the internet was actually invented in 1989. So it's essentially, a little over 30 years ago. So the internet is not very old, but you guys were born in it. You guys were born in the age of the internet. You were born in the age where everybody had a smartphone, perhaps. Maybe in the world where everybody, began to think, as we heard in our previous talk, about virtual reality, where you can get into a virtual world. Maybe you haven't seen that. Maybe you have, but at least you have heard about it. You guys were born in a world with AR and AI. All of these are exponential technologies. And that's a great example of how times have changed. You can't even think about, hey, what happened in 89 was the internet was discovered. It's because you were born into it. You were born in the age of the internet of everything, where not just people were connected, but devices and sensors. And sensors, there's a trillion sensors. And those sensors, are found in everything, including your computers and your devices. So today, in the next, 25 minutes or so, feel free to really ask questions. But I also want you to be able to use your chat if you want to. And then we'll spend about the last 10 minutes having a discussion where each of you is going to have a moonshot question of sorts, or maybe one thing. So here are the things that I'm going to ask you to do at the end. One thing that you found really fascinating to you. So think about those three things. One thing that you found fascinating, one thing that you wish, one thing that you wish for, and one thing that you wonder about. Something fascinating that you saw or that you learned, something that you wish. It could be something that you wish you knew or something that you wish you could do. And just a wonder, I wonder, if, for example, a wonder for me is, I wonder if humans will be able to live on Mars in 2021. It's just a wonder. So there's no right or wrong answer. So think about those three questions. Some of you might forget, and that is okay, because you're going to reveal your own mental modes and understand where you think and how you think. That are you an incremental thinker, as in you think in terms of 10% improvement. A 10% improvement is, well, I'm going to do 10% better than I did before. Or if you're an exponential thinker, meaning that you are a 10x improvement, that you're able to leverage, the resources that you have to really expand your capacity. You will understand how incremental thinking puts a limit on what we think is possible. You will understand that. And you will actually discover the real reason exponential projects meet the internal resistance and how to overcome it. And what that means is an exponential project is actually a moonshot project. It's a project that's fundamentally difficult. It looks difficult. It looks impossible, but it is achievable with the right tools, with the right mentors, and with the right resources. Something like the Innovator program that Moonshot Jr. has. You will also identify new ways to measure, or new ways of new metrics to look at incremental and exponential thinking. And you will hear about why companies fail after achieving exponential growth, or why they succeed. Google is an exponential company. They use exponential thinking. They use moonshot thinking. In fact, they have something called a moonshot kitchen, which is basically a bigger version in terms of the corporate world of Moonshot Jr. And you will see how exponential thinking affects your life, and understand and know what exponential technology is. So we will look at a quick history of exponential technology. Remember, I asked you, what happened in 1989. I will tell you that I actually have no idea, what also happened way before the time that I was born. I actually have to Google that. I have to research that, because now I have access to a smartphone that allows me to be able to do that. So this is an extension of myself and of my brain. So you want to think about really the accelerating pace of change that in the agricultural revolution, that is where we were focusing on linear thinking. And then we moved on to the Industrial Revolution, where we were now using tools, tools like tractors and harvesters, to be able to harvest our crops. And then the light bulb was invented. And then there was moon landing, which is where Moonshot is. The first Moonshot was moon landing, and the very, very next one happened only 22 years later, which was the invention of the World Wide Web, or the internet. And then 9 years after that, the entire human genome was sequenced. And the human genome means that we were able to understand all the entire human DNA, what really makes you a human. And notice that between the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, it was 8,000 years. It took 8,000 years to move away from that agrarian era. And between the industrial revolution to the invention of the light bulb, it took 120 years. So the difference between the agricultural and the light bulb invention is huge. But from the light bulb to the moon landing, it was just 90 years. And from moon landing to the World Wide Web, 22 years. From the World Wide Web to sequencing the human genome, 9 years. And what does that mean for your next moonshot? It's not supposed to take a lifetime. That's why we're saying if you're not speeding, you are sleeping, and you are not going to really compete in the world. So
we can expect it sooner.
Yes, you can expect it sooner. And that's why you need to be a moonshot thinker if you are to stay relevant. So as you can see, this graph over here is an exponential graph. It's like a J. So that graph is an exponential graph. And it's telling us that really we are going to lead ourselves into something called the singularity. And the singularity is basically a stage where everything is hyper and interconnected. So it's like a world where you're talking to Alexa and Siri and Cortana and Gboard and all of those things. You guys, you will see that in your lifetime. I promise you that. So how do you know if you are thinking incrementally, like as in 10%? If you're thinking incrementally, it's more like this line graph on the line on the right over here. It's like a straight line. You're thinking linearly. That's incremental. That's how most people think. And when you create moonshots, you can't think incrementally, but you can use the incremental results to help you be exponential. Now, you understand that the difference between the next moonshot and your moonshot and somebody else's moonshot is going to actually surpass anything that you know. In fact, on the right side of this, on the left side of this graph, you see a little mouse over here, right? You see that just around 2012, the first computer surpassed the brain power of a mouse. In 2015, it was only 5 years ago that the first computer surpassed the brain power of a little mouse. In 2023, which is 3 years from today, the next computer that you're going to have in your palms is going to surpass the brain power of a human being in the next 3 years. Think about that. In 2045, that computer is going to surpass the brain power equivalent of all 7 billion human brains combined together. Put everyone's brains together, it will not be powerful enough for that computer. That is where we are heading. That's why you can't think linearly anymore. Your computer right now does have the power, the brain power of the mouse. You think it's powerful? No, it's not. In 3 years, it should be a radically different year. And I want you to look at 2 concepts: the deception of a linear or exponential age. So deception is a type of it's a term that we use in exponential thinking that says, hey, that's not really happening. Like right now, people think, AI is not real. People think VR is not real. People think blockchain is not real. It's an age of deception where you're not quite sure because it is confusing. Question?
I think they unmuted accidentally.
Oh, okay. Now, I promise you that you will understand how to adopt an exponential mindset, and that some of you are going to forget, the 3 things I actually think about, and that is fine. So, what does an exponential mindset look like? It's actually a moonshot thinking mindset. And what that means is there is no problem that we cannot solve when we apply exponential technologies like robotics and AI and in innovative ways. That is what an exponential mindset is. Like when I asked you those questions, the first thing I would have done was probably maybe turn on my VR over here, maybe even Cortana or Siri to take notes for me without me having to write down on a post-it. I could have done that too, because a post-it really is also technology. Paper, the invention of paper is technology. So think of paper itself, a pen, a pencil, all of those are technologies. So that's exponential thinking, because I no longer have to remind myself of the 3 things that I'm going to ask you at the end of this session. So if you wrote down the 3 things, just quickly share on the chat. If you wrote down the 3 things I said I'm going to ask you.
Right. So, Freedom, we had a response actually. From Karan.
Okay.
Yeah, he mentioned that he wonders if travel outside the galaxy is possible. That was one thing. And the second thought comes from Arnav. So this is on your context of computers getting smarter. So if it gets too smart, will it have things such as own emotions? So these are like one thoughts, and one is a part of a wonderment that these have listed down.
I love that. So we are absolutely going to reach a stage where computers and robots are going to have emotions and they're going to have sentiments. In fact, there are technologies today that exist, like Watson, right? And in our future talks, we can go over the specific technologies, but that is a moral and ethical question. Like as we build these technologies, when computers finally get to talk back at us, when computers finally get to make their own independent decisions and begin to argue with us about what works and what doesn't work, what does that mean? When a computer begins to make a decision of life and death.
Right, and that's why we have comments from few students how it's a little scary for them, and how if they become too self-aware, and that's why we're talking about the ethics, the dilemma all of us face in terms of ethics, like how do we deal with that kind of a situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine that now people are actually choosing? If I wanted to be a surgeon, in the next 5 to 10 years, I might opt to have my arm cut off my right arm and put a bionic arm that has the precision of the most powerful computer. And that is going to be a new exponential technology where I disregard my arm, the arm that I was born with, and opt for a bionic arm, a smart arm that has remarkable surgical precision.
Right, definitely an ethical dilemma.
Is an ethical dilemma. And those are the questions that you guys should be thinking about as you work on your moonshot ideas. And those are the wonderment questions that we want to think about before we build anything. Because God knows, we don't want to be fighting a war with robots in the future. Because if they are stronger and more powerful than we are combined, if their intelligence is more powerful than all humanity combined, that is a recipe for disaster. Therefore, we cannot afford to think incrementally anymore. We have to aim to think about making things at least 10 times better so that we can keep up with technology that's evolving. One of the things, that we're seeing right now is like the Human Longevity Project and Cellularity, where you guys are probably going to be able to live to be 200, 500, even 1,000 years. And what does that mean for our business models? What does that mean in terms of limited resources on Earth? What does that mean in terms of other planets out there? Somebody asked about, being able to travel the galaxy. Are there any other livable places there? Which is what SpaceX is doing, another moonshot company. So Elon Musk talked a lot about moonshot thinking. He also talks a lot about exponential thinking, which is why you guys were able to see the Falcon 9, take off into the International Space Station a couple months ago as a pilot to show you what your future field trips will look like. So I promised you that you guys will get to understand and know what an exponential technology is. So really what it is these are technologies that are rapidly accelerating and shaping major industries in all aspects of our life. And your comments show that we now have moral and ethical dilemmas. It's defining and redefining who we are as human beings. Who we know ourselves as today is not going to be the same after 2023. Who are we? That is going to be the fundamental question of our life, to redefine ourselves. And so for a technology to be exponential, the power of that technology or the speed doubles each year. The power or the speed doubles each year, or the cost of that technology drops by half. That disrupts business models, that disrupts who has access and who does not. Like right now, everyone has a cell phone. Just a few years ago, we had like this little flash drives. Remember that? And that was an invention. You could save your files and documents. Now we have the cloud, where we can save things in your Google Drive, in your Dropbox, and anywhere else in the cloud and access it from anywhere in the world. So it's now faster to share information, and the cost dropped significantly in creating that technology. That is what makes a technology exponential. When I got the Magic Leap owned by Google and AT&T, this was worth $4,000 just 2 years ago. This is a full-fledged computer. Today, it's about $2,000. and it's better, and it's even faster. So this is an exponential technology. And do you guys know that Apple is creating a new AR glass, which will be released before 2023? Meaning that AR is now going to accelerate faster than we think, and everyone will be using augmented reality. In fact, if you are using Snapchat and TikTok, you already are using AR. If you've played this game called Pokemon Go and other things in between, you've been introduced to AR. The only thing is that everybody is going to have it, and the cost is going to drop by half.
Right. So just for students who are new here, when you use the Snapchat filters or the Instagram filters, so those are parts of your AR experiences, all those filters and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, the filters and all of that, that is AR experience, or augmented reality. So what is exponential here is, it's a convergence, like a coming together of new business models and technologies and ecosystems due to faster and quicker computing. Remember that in the next 3 years, your computers are going to be, they're going to have a power that is much more than your brain. That means that the way we do business is going to change. The way we learn is going to change. It's already changing. I think the graph that I showed you needs to be revised because it did not take into account the pandemic. And the pandemic has accelerated the innovation space globally. Over here on the right, you see that exponential technologies are part of what we call the fourth industrial revolution. And there are a lot of them, including AI and robotics. Somebody talked about that.
Yes.
You want to see, I don't know if you can see the entire list over here, but everything that you said is included. The Internet of Things, gender parity, that's equity, which is now the ethical concerns, right? Is your technology gender neutral? Does it favor a particular group of people? And if it does, is that ethical?
Right. This is interesting because a lot of systems have biases built into them because, of course, they are eventually they are made by people. So we remember cases of the iPhone face detection, and there were a lot of other things in terms of even systems, hiring systems that prefer a certain gender or maybe ethnicity over other. So,
yeah. Those are ethical questions. In fact, those are questions we're dealing with today. So think of it this way. I'm a descendant of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is actually my mother's uncle, so a direct line of Nelson Mandela. And I grew up, in the apartheid South Africa. And we had our own issues there. But then, I remember when we would go to KwaZulu-Natal, in Bezo, we would talk to Tata, we call him Tata. We all sat around the circle and we just have these interesting conversations. And one of the things he always talked about was, education itself was the key and the future to leadership in a world that's changing. And that is one of the reasons why I actually chose into getting into an education space as an entrepreneur that looks at invention. So he was and he is a major influencer in my life. And we had serious issues in terms of apartheid, in terms of like equality, right? In terms of ethics and identity, in terms of innovation and productivity, all of those things mattered. And every part of the world faces that. And today, I think the United States itself, as a young country, which is barely, 250 years old, is facing growing pains on issues of racial and ethnical justice, and people are marching the streets because people are now empowered. And how are people able to march in millions and converge in Washington, D.C. to protest an issue? Is because of exponential technologies using social media to announce, like, hey, let's all protest this thing. We saw that happen in Hong Kong, and we're seeing it happen, in Egypt with Tehran. So people are now using these technologies to change how governments work. We just talked about going into the galaxy, and one of you had that question. The SpaceX Dragon, I was fortunate to be able to go and see it, being built. And last week I went to Florida to see the next version of SN8 that will be taking off. They haven't put the booster together, but it's very, very impressive. So we saw that during this pandemic, we saw that exponential technology, such as like SpaceX's rockets over here, are now helping to catapult businesses forward in terms of like travel. The future of travel into the galaxy is now possible with exponential thinking, such as SpaceX. With Dragon 9, something fundamental happened. And if you are paying attention, if you are looking at your exponential thinking, you are no longer just thinking about traveling on Earth, but you're now looking at solutions around space itself. Self-driving cars. I was part of this theater of the car in 2014 at Stanford. It's like a big giant room where there is a car that's self-driving, that behaves like a human. You talk to it because now this car has feelings. Do you just call your car to come and drive you and take you anywhere? Do you say, thank you, car, for taking me here? Do you ask it if it's feeling okay, if it's charged? Do you ask it if it really wants to go anywhere with you? Or you just give it orders? Like, hey, Siri, play this song. Alexa, what is that? Do you ever say, thank you, Alexa? Alexa, I really, really appreciate you for playing that song for me. It really made me feel better. Alexa, would you like me to sing a song for you? Does Alexa really work for you? Does Siri work for you? Is it fair for us to demand all these things from the technologies, the AI, like self-driving cars? I don't know, but these are questions of our time. Somebody talked about AI. A self-driving car is fundamentally an AI. It's a car that's using a Google algorithm to know what the streets are and all these mathematical things. And this car is going to get even cheaper as we move forward. In fact, Elon Musk just announced that the next Tesla is going to be way less than $30,000. So it means the price is going to go down significantly from what it was at $100,000 with the Model X. So from $100,000 to $30,000, you have essentially slashed the price by half. So the AI, the self-driving car itself, is going to generate closer to $1 trillion of revenue by 2030. I think I'm going to change that number to by 2025. Why? Because of what has happened with COVID-19. More and more people are ordering things online. And if we are not supposed to be interacting a lot, it means that the technology for self-driving cars to do delivery services is going to be actually an opportunity for you to involve and engage in. In fact, if it's an area you're interested in, Tesla has made these algorithms available. You can build a self-driving car yourself using the Tesla technology. And so That law that I talked about is the law of accelerating returns, or Moore's law. Over here is my friend. I took this picture. This is my friend, the founders of Google here. So this is Sergey Brin at the back over here, and this is Larry Page, and that's Eric Schmidt. And they were doing a test drive on one of the first self-driving cars on the Google campus, and I was part of that process. So I like this picture because I took it. And we were having a conversation around these exponential technologies. Remember at the beginning, I talked about the Moonshot Kitchen, that Google has this idea that when you work for Google, you do whatever you're doing for 80% of the time, but for 20% of the time, you can do whatever you want to do in the Moonshot Kitchen, which is essentially like an innovator program, like the Moonshot Jr program. So you go there, and maybe you want to work on a self-driving car. That's what Waymo became. Maybe you want to work on AR. We had the Google Glass, which was actually revolutionary, but the timing was just not right. It was not ready yet to go down in half. And those who caught up on, sooner, like Niantic with Pokemon Go, when the timing was right, their technologies became exponential at that time. But Google did start that as a Moonshot Kitchen company. And for a technology to be exponential, I promise you that you understand what an exponential technology really is. Remember that it is the power and or the speed that doubles each year, or for the price to drop by half. So I promised you that you would know what an exponential technology is in the context of our expert conversation today. So as humans, really, we do tend to overestimate what can be achieved in the short term, but we vastly underestimate what can be achieved in the long term, which is why investing in a Moonshot Kitchen or a Moonshot Jr Innovator program is really for the benefit of the entire species. Because in 2023, we are not going to be equipped. We are not going to be equipped to process exponential growth. It simply won't be possible with all the technologies that are going to have a power that's fundamentally bigger and more impactful than our brain. And by 2045, the entire planet, even if we put our brains together, we will not be as powerful as the fastest computer at the time. And I'm going to bring that number maybe to even 2030 or 2035 at the latest, based on what has happened with this virus. Now there's a lot of personal data, so we had a quick conversation about, when you are using your smartphone, all these sensors in your phone are collecting data about where you're going, where you are, or whatever there is. Whenever you download an app somewhere, right? There is data that's coming out right there. We now know the human genome. It means that I can now, in less than an hour, give you a whole sequence of your DNA, tell you what your risk of, if you're at risk of getting cancer, or what you should avoid, and things like that. What do I do with your data? Should you actually benefit from your data, or should the company that has a patent on the technology benefit from your data? What is the future of data as an exponential technology for healthcare? The entire Stanford healthcare system is shifting to like virtual visits. Usually, like when I got sick, or or if I had to go for my checkup, I would go to the clinic. My doctor, would go through the examination and things like that. Now it's telemedicine. I have a conversation like I'm having with you. If I don't need surgery or something crazy like that, I don't have to go to my doctor anymore in person. In fact, we now have sensors and things like that using my phone where I can tell her my blood pressure, my heart rate, and things like that without setting foot in the hospital or the clinic. That is the world that we're living in. Education, it was the first institution to be shut down globally when COVID-19 came. All schools shut down. That tells you that education is going to be the first thing that's going to go down when it comes down to matters of life and death. Why did schools shut down? Because they are using linear thinking and not exponential thinking, not moonshot thinking. So all of these things means that with technology, things can now be digitized, meaning that instead of a doctor writing a prescription, she can or he can just press a button and that prescription goes to the pharmacy. And I can order my self-driving service to pick up my prescription and drive my prescription to my house. And maybe I have a personal humanoid robot that's going to pick it up, open my door, and deliver it to me without me leaving this chair. So digitization is the first stage of exponential. Remember that we talked about deceptive in the beginning, and I tried to explain it, but it was kind of vague. This is the second D. It means exponential growth is very, very hard to spot. You have to think a particular way to be able to see that, oh my gosh, that is exponential. One of the reasons why I love Moonshot Jr. is because I see that they are way, way ahead of the future of education. They are in the deceptive phase. They're doing education and innovation right. In fact, they're not only there, but they are also disruptive. Once you have passed the deceptive phase, you become disruptive. That is the third D. So remember that I asked you in the beginning, and I told you that, and I promised you that you guys will know the 6 Ds to navigate exponential growth. And this exponential movement is an actual movement. I promised you that, and I'm giving you that. So I'm essentially giving you what I promised. And when I talk about these glasses that Apple was making them sleeker and better by 2023 with AR and Snapchat, you're gonna have Snap glasses and things like that. You are dematerializing it. By dematerializing, it means you no longer have this. You no longer have a laptop. You no longer have a desktop. Maybe it's just something that is a chip in your brain. And with Neuralink, you can now put a chip in your brain, and I can simply think about Google, and I get a screen about whatever I'm thinking about. So
yeah, I wonder how far they would take it, like in terms of even the glasses, because like we already know Samsung had one, so it's kind of exciting to see what Apple is going to come up with, because they're definitely going to try to outdo them or come up with something.
Well, Apple will do them. Apple is actually buying all AR content companies. They've been on this acquiring phase, which means for you guys, with the Moonshot projects, if you create something extraordinary around AR, it could become like a company with Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things are going to get demonetized. Demonetized means, like, sometimes I can't remember the last time I actually had cash. During COVID-19,
Yeah.
some places, most places were like, we don't want cash.
Right, right.
Yeah, use your card. So that means that once things, once we use, that kind of currency, fiat currency, now we'll probably be using blockchain technology to pay for things and things like that. So demonetization is like making the way that we do business and transactions um, um, hands-free, charge-free. It's all happening sometimes just by thought. And the last D is democratized. Because the price has reduced by half, that technology is now accessible to everyone. If you can buy a cheap smartphone with an internet connection, you have the same communication capabilities with anyone in the world. It doesn't matter if it's, Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or if it's Freedom. It doesn't matter. We have access to the same information. So you have no reason not to think exponentially. You just have to have the skills and the tools to think that way. So remember, my promise was that you are going to learn how to navigate through this exponential movement and this journey with 6 Ds. And I'm going to repeat those 6 Ds. 1, the technology must be digitized. It becomes an information science. So we can use computers to manage it. In 2045, these computers are more powerful than we are. So there's no reason why you should remember what happened in 1989, but rather you can tap onto that digitized information. Deceptive. The technology is hard to spot because people are thinking linearly. Exponential thinkers can say it. The 3rd D is disruptive. It seems initially deceptive. Are we really going to go to Mars? Falcon 9 only went to the Space Center. Dematerialized. Things that were very, very large suddenly become super small, and demonetized. The cost for producing and replicating the technology is dramatically cheaper, and democratized. Everybody now has access. I also promised you, to begin to think differently, to think about what you wonder about, like what the future of exponential technology really is. Write down what you wonder, what you still wonder about exponential technology. What does that future look like? For me, I think it's really bound by technological advance. I think that your data is actually money. I think that if you figure out technologies to monetize your own data, your own DNA, your own creations, your own interactions with self-driving cars with your phone, I think that is the future. I think your network is money. If you're part of Moonshot Jr., you are now surrounded by all these really smart, curious minds all over the world who can help you accomplish your moonshot. Microsoft purchased LinkedIn. Why? Because LinkedIn has closer to 1 billion people. They were essentially buying a network asset.
Right.
Today, information is free. If you have access to the internet, if you can Google it, but knowledge is not. Knowledge is how you use the information. So knowledge can be profitable. I might know that, hey, Freedom, if you run and exercise for 30 minutes a day, you could be more productive. You could actually, reduce your risk of getting diabetes and heart disease. I have the information, but the knowledge means I get to take action. There is a difference. And how to do that distinguishes between linear thinkers. Those who are linear thinkers look at information. They try and memorize things like, oh, what really happened in 1989? Well, that wastes time. Exponential thinkers would probably say, Alexa, what happened in 1989? Alexa will give you some things. Go to Google, what happened in 1989? Notable events. Because that information is free. But the knowledge is profitable. Information is just a catalyst to knowledge. And that's why you have programs like Moonshot Jr., like SpaceX, that help you to transform information into knowledge. And the crazy one for me is you can now buy immortality. It's no longer possible for you to truly die, because with cryogenics, people are now investing in preserving their own genomic data so that they can live to be 1,000 years. I can choose to go to sleep today, and they put me in a giant chamber, and I can tell them, wake me up in 500 years. Suppose I had a terminal disease that I knew would kill me in the next 3 years, but I know that with exponential technology, in the next 10 years, medical advancements will have reached a point for them to cure that. I could say, put me to sleep for the next 10 years. And so my body is sort of in hibernation in a giant cryogenic chamber. And when a solution to my condition is found, they wake me up. And I can continue living.
Yeah, so again, these are really great examples, but like we discussed, one of the themes that consistently bugs us is the ethical dilemma and whether we should do it or not. And that it has been quite challenging to almost all the, I can say almost all the firms that have AI capabilities or are going down that path, because apart from them being disruptive, it's also the matter of acceptance by the consumers, right?
Yes.
Whether we are still ready to accept that or not. So lots to think about. I mean, I'm pretty sure the students are also thinking a lot about how our data is going to be used, how it's going to reform healthcare and education, and also in terms of our treatments, like how would it really help us lead a better life?
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So, at the end of the day, here is what I invite you to do. Know that these exponential technologies are here, and Moonshot thinking is your access to understanding them. Your data is money in the future. Think in terms of movements. Your 6 Ds, digitization, democratization, demonetization, and all of that. This is the movement of our time. And so as you think about your Moonshot projects, think in terms of what is the movement for our time right now, and also adopt a Moonshot thinking mindset. One small step for man, one giant step for humankind. Now, I'm going to ask you now to share what you learned There were three things that I asked you to share on your chat at the end.
Right. So we had some responses, but let me just repose the question. And in the meantime, the students can also start typing. So the first thing was one thing that you found fascinating. The second was something you wish you could do or knew. And the third was something you wonder. So I have posted it again on the chat box. If you have if you have the replies for them, please start posting it. Let's just give them a couple of seconds to type in their chats.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and students, you also have access to your microphone, so it would be great if you could just speak onto them. Like it would be easier.
You can do that. That's another way. If I was a moonshot thinking person, I would probably do that too. Mm-hmm. Just because I said use the chat doesn't mean that.
Right. So Arnav says that he learned that many technological advancements always have flaws no matter what. So yeah, there's always room for improvement. You got that right.
And that is why we have iPhone 1 all the way to iPhone 12. They're always improving it. Mm-hmm. So you can't stop improving your technology. Excellent.
Okay. But he's also wondering who wants to sleep for 500 years. Well, it's just a possibility.
Those are ethical questions, right? Those are ethical questions. Those are personal questions. Those are choice questions.
Right. And we have a response from Karan, who says that he found fascinating is how much exponential technology improves over time. So yes, again, you were really paying attention to how the time gap got shortened. So initially we had between the agrarian and the industrial age, there was a lot of years, and over time it got reduced. So yeah. All right. So we do have a lot of key takeaways from today's session. I think we can conclude today's session now. We Wonderful. Have got, we had a lot of engagement in the chat box as well, like if you scroll through. So students kept on posting a lot about what you were saying. All right. So before we conclude, so I request the students to just hand back a little bit for a minute and two. We want to announce our Moonshot Jr contest that's been ongoing. So it's an art and video creation contest, and you could either submit your artwork or a video which is of 3 minutes. For more details, you can go on to moonshotjr.com/contest. This is the link. And you can submit your work. All the details are over there. We would be finishing the contest by mid of November. So you would have the details of the exact date and time on that website as well. The winners would be getting Moonshot t-shirts, and they would also have the chance to win a certificate for video and their art submissions. All right. So apart from the one-on-one sessions that you have with our project guides and the sessions with our subject matter experts, such as today, we also offer other services. For instance, we have the one-on-one classroom setup. There are expert group sessions. We have college admission counseling, as well as your resume sessions. So if there is anything else that you want to check out, then you can definitely get in touch with us, and you could also contact your project guide for these queries. This is in a nutshell what we have right now. The video making course, this first cycle had ended some days ago, some weeks ago, and we'll be restarting the video making course again. So we'll have Nick who will be guiding you through that. The announcement will be made soon, and we'll be sending out invites. So if you're into that kind of thing, or you want to explore that kind of an area, like the whole production process, filmmaking, editing, sound, how to give a delivery on camera, like how to speak on camera, then this is something that you can definitely check it out, because again, it is outcome driven. You would have a video for you. You could use it for your benefit. So maybe upload it on sites, or talk about it with your friends and other people. Apart from that, it's only 6 weeks, so it's not too lengthy. It's really simple, quick, and outcome within 6 weeks. So, all right. Thank you, Freedom, again for joining us today. And there were a lot of key takeaways, great insights from this session, a lot of engagement. We look forward to having you again in future.
I am looking forward to it. And you guys go out there in the world, adopt moonshot thinking, and change the world. I'll see you guys soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, students.